At long last, I have returned for another class ranking of 5e Dungeons & Dragons. This go-round, we'll be looking at the Cleric, one of the most classic, staple classes of the game. As before, I will first go through the general Cleric features, then all the Cleric domains, which are essentially the subclasses for Cleric, and each feature will get a ranking from F through S tier, and at the end, we'll see how all the different domains stack up against one another. In earlier editions of D&D, which I'm considering 3e and before, a party without a cleric was usually considered doomed. The game was by far more brutal back in those days, and the cleric was the best at keeping the party from falling apart at the seams. It was not until 4th edition that all the characters could reliably recover their own hit points. Imagine taking a long rest and recovering only hit points equal to your level, and there is no such thing as spending your hit dice or healing surges to recover hit points. And a short rest, don't even think about that. Compound this with the debilitating conditions that lasted for several rounds or even several minutes without the benefit of repeated saving throws at the end of your turn to break free. Poisons and other special attacks could damage your ability scores. Undead that could drain your class levels away, sometimes even permanently. The cleric could reliably prevent or cure all these afflictions and more, and at mid to high levels of play, even bring fallen allies back to life. All of this on top of some decent fighting capabilities and a few noteworthy offensive spells, and turn undead. The cleric was no class to scoff at or casually disregard. A new trend began in 4e and continues into 5e, of other classes being more capable healers. The Bard, the Druid, Paladin, Ranger, 4e's Warlord. Sure, these classes could heal and remove negative conditions in old school editions, but they were pretty far from being the beacon of life that was the cleric. Now there are even sorcerers and warlocks that can heal. Strange as that is, and let's not forget the artificer either. As well, every character can regain hit points on their own with short rests and long rests. Has the game gone too far with this healing and this ease of regaining hit points? Some believe so. They think that it hurts the grittiness and the challenge of the game. They think that D&D has gotten soft. Others, on the other side of this argument, claim that this frees up the players to really try different party makeups, instead of always feeling pressure that they have to have a cleric. It also removes the old school trend of parties trying to stock up on obscene amounts of healing potions and wands of cure light wounds and the like. Personally, I do think that 4e and 5e have gone a little overboard with healing, but it's not difficult to modify with alternative rules or house rules. In my games, for example, long rests do not automatically refill a character's hit points. That alone makes a big difference in terms of adding a touch of realism and increasing the tension a bit. Along with healing being opened up, debilitating conditions have been toned down substantially, further reducing the need to always have a cleric in the party, as characters are more likely to make it through such effects by way of their own merit. But despite all of this, the cleric remains the greatest healer in D&D. The game has broadened, it's become more user-friendly, it's become more gentle on newcomers, but none of the changes have removed the cleric from his position as one of the core, pillar classes of the game. One of the big four: fighter, wizard, rogue, and cleric. Though what really sells the cleric for me personally is the role-playing and storytelling connections built into it. Each cleric is dedicated to a god, or even a set of gods, which influences a number of character aspects. For one, if you play a cleric, you typically have a connection to a temple, shrine, or other holy location, and your behavior and personality, and your alignment even, will be comparative with your religion, with your god. And if you break out from that orientation, you again find role-playing traction in the question of why you have fallen or why you've rebelled. D&D at its core is mythical, and religion and myth are of the same cloth, the same deep roots. The playing of D&D is, in itself, like a religious experience. The gatherings, the implements, the rituals, the connection with a realm of transformative journeys through mythic environments. It is a world of demons and angels, dragons and heroes, wonders and miracles, and the great contests of souls' fates. This spiritual element gives D&D and many other fantasy RPGs a kind of depth, and the Cleric class is born from those depths. I could talk about this for quite some time, but let's shift gears and get into the Cleric's general class features. Don your sacred vestments and holy symbols. You have been ordained a vessel of your God's power in the world. Hit die. The Cleric has a D8, which is average. It's in between a wizard and a fighter. Armor. You are proficient with light armor, medium armor, and shields, which provides a respectable amount of protection. Weapons. You're proficient with simple weapons, which is nothing great, but there are some decent options like light crossbow, javelin, spear, quarterstaff. Saving throws. Wisdom and charisma might be the best baseline saving throw proficiencies to have. No one ever wants to fail a saving throw, of course, but wisdom and charisma generally are the saves that you really don't want to fail, as they often have to do with things like mind control and being flung into different planes of existence. Skills and tools. You get 2 skills from history, insight, medicine, persuasion, and religion, and no tools. It's helpful, but it is limited. Skills have traditionally been an area in which the Cleric does not excel. Spellcasting, first level. Starting off at the beginning of your character's path, you gain spellcasting. Your magic is divine. It's bestowed upon you by your god, whether directly from the god or indirectly through rites of investiture at your temple. And you use wisdom as your spellcasting ability modifier, which is the ability score that is often associated with spiritual type classes. Note that you also receive the ritual casting sub-feature, which is a very nice perk. Clerics use holy symbols as spell focuses, or foci if you want to be very proper, which can be held in the hand or displayed on a necklace, emblazoned upon a shield, and so on. You have full spellcasting progression, like a wizard, a druid, a bard, or a sorcerer does, and you prepare spells after each long rest, selecting from the entire Cleric spell list when you do. The Cleric spells does not have a large variety of directly offensive spells, but it has plenty that provide healing, protection, and utility benefits. Spellcasting is your most central and powerful class feature, and it will serve you and your party more and more with each level you gain. You also select your Divine Domain at first level, but we'll get into those in a bit. Channel Divinity, Turn Undead, second level. Here you gain another signature feature of Clerics, Turn Undead. This is a 30-foot radius area effect centered on you that can send undead fleeing as though in terror of the holy power that channels through you. When it works very well and can often swing an entire encounter in your party's favor. You can use Channel Divinity once per short rest, then twice per short rest at 6th level, and 3 times at 18th level. When you're not facing undead foes, Turn Undead does not have a use, but your Divine Domain will give you a second mode or option for your Channel Divinity, which is an interesting design choice in 5e. Destroy Undead, 5th level. You now utterly obliterate any undead that fails its wisdom saving throw against your Turn Undead if it is of low enough challenge rating. There's a simple table that shows this threshold. Here are some examples. At 5th level Cleric, you destroy undead such as basic skeletons and zombies, as well as shadows. At 18th level, ghouls and specters. At 11th level, ghasts and will-o-wisps. At 14th level, mummies and wights. And at 17th level, banshees, flame skulls, and ghosts. So, against lesser undead, this is a devastating feature, especially if they're grouped up in a horde. Divine Intervention, 10th level. At this level, you gain a very interesting ability to beseech your deity for a miracle. As an action, you pray to your god to intercede and help you accomplish whatever challenge you're currently facing. As an action, you roll a d100, and on a result equal to your cleric level or lower, the god intervenes in some way as determined by the DM. The feature is very creative. It's really open-ended. It's also quite flavorful. It blurs the line between hard rules mechanics and DM improvisation. It's part class feature and part storytelling, and I love it for that. You can only attempt divine intervention once per long rest, and if the miracle does occur, you have to wait a week before calling upon your god in this way again. Then, once you reach 20th level cleric, divine intervention always functions, as by that point you have become a living avatar of your god. That, and the campaign is almost over by 20th level, so you will probably only have 1 or 2 divine interventions before all is said and done. The main issue with divine intervention is its low chance of functioning, and you have to spend your action to use it. There are often situations of great danger in which you would wish that a miracle would happen, and everything really comes down to the choice of what you make on this one turn before all is lost. In such a moment, when you would most need the miraculous intercession, it's so hard to justify spending that precious action for, say, a 10% or maybe a 15% chance of success. There is a distinct thrill in making this choice and in rolling an incredible success that saves the day. But for most players, most of the time, they won't take that leap of faith because it is such a long shot, rationally speaking. I wish divine intervention would work sort of like a sorcerer's wild magic, and you make the intervention attempt when you cast a cleric spell. So, other than the standard ability score enhancements that all classes receive, that actually does it for the cleric's general features. Again, spellcasting is so huge that there isn't a lot of room for additional general class features, but that's fine because the subclasses of the cleric are so thematic. Let us turn our holy books to the divine domains. Knowledge domain. You serve a god of knowledge and learning, giving you a religious scholar theme to go along with your divine magic. Beyond all the role-playing and lore-based rewards of this domain comes tactical benefits as well. The more you know about a location or an enemy, the better you can prepare to handle the specific challenges you'll face, the more likely you are to succeed. Domain spells, first level. Each domain has a certain number of spells that you always have prepared. These are in addition to the baseline amount of spells you can prepare as a cleric. Knowledge domain spells are as follows. Fittingly, they are mind-based spells, all enchantments and divinations. These are a selection of great spells overall, with command, suggestion, and confusion as excellent control effects, and the divination spells providing, appropriately, knowledge that can aid you in a number of ways. One of the greatest things about domain spells is that they give you access to spells that are not on the cleric spell list. In this case, Identify, Suggestion, Non-Detection, Arcane Eye, and Confusion. Blessing of Knowledge, first level. Also at the beginning of your path, you gain proficiency in 2 languages of choice, and 2 skills chosen from Arcana, History, Nature, and Religion. Furthermore, you have expertise in the chosen skills, doubling your proficiency bonus on checks with them. This feature opens you up to additional social interaction with more types of creatures by way of speaking their languages, and enhances an area that clerics usually fall behind in, skills. I really like this feature for how its theme truly fits the knowledge-based cleric. Channel Divinity, Knowledge of the Ages, second level. As an alternate mode to turn undead, you can tap into a divine well of knowledge as an action, gaining proficiency with any skill or tool for 10 minutes. Once again, the Knowledge Cleric makes strides in an area of skills, really rounding out a class that already is quite versatile. Channel Divinity, Read Thoughts, 6th level. You gain another mode of Channel Divinity here, focusing on a creature within 60 feet. It makes a wisdom save, and on a failure, you can read its surface thoughts for 1 minute. During this time, you can also cast Suggestion on the target without spending a spell slot, and it automatically fails its save against the suggestion. The potential with Read Thoughts is so great. It's like a combination of 2 spells in one without spending slots, and it gives you both magical insight and mind control. Potent Spellcasting, 8th level. You now add your Wisdom modifier to the damage rolls of your cantrips. While this is not going to put you in agonizing Eldritch Blast territory, it is a substantial increase in potency to your Sacred Flame or Toll the Dead. Visions of the Past, 17th level. By spending time meditating on a held object, or on your immediate location, you see mental glimpses of the object's prior owners and significant events that happened at the location. I love the effect, which once again falls into this hazy territory between mechanics and DM storytelling/improvising. Some DMs do get a little uncomfortable with this sort of effect, because they feel like they don't know quite what to say, or maybe that they're disappointing the player if they don't come up with something amazing just right there on the spot. But I have found that such worries are largely hollow anxiety, and that players are happy with just a couple of helpful details. Some players will even give you suggestions or ask you questions to help prompt your improv. So the effect in and of itself I love, but for 17th level, sadly it's not enough, as it's not really anything more than a 3rd level spell's effect. True, it takes no spell slot, and you can do this meditation every short rest, but it just feels like a lower level feature. Personally, I very much like the knowledge domain. The knowledge and the skills and the scholar-like or almost wizard-like aspects of it appeal to me. Not wizard in the sense of evoker throwing fire everywhere, but wizard in the classic sense of a tome-studying lore master, a mind-influencing enchanter, and a secrets-gleaning diviner. It also somewhat reminds me of the bard, especially with the channel divinity that can give you proficiency with any skill or tool. It's a great fit for the cleric and a breath of fresh air from all the battle priest type clerics that we see so often. The life domain. I would say that life is the most classic of cleric themes in D&D. Life and death and the suffering in between are truly the great existential forces that religions deal with. As a cleric of this domain, you are the most powerful healer in the game, a beacon of vitality that preserves everyone around you. Domain spells, 1st level. Here are the life domain spells, which actually are all cleric spells in this case, so you get access to nothing you couldn't have anyway. That does not catch my interest too much, I have to say. The fact that you always have them prepared is nice. Of course, they have to do with healing, curing, warding from death, and even restoring life to the fallen. Bonus proficiency, 1st level. This here provides you with heavy armor proficiency. Going from scale mail to chain mail, or half plate to full plate is quite nice. It's like adding 1 or 2 points to your AC. My only critique here is that this doesn't exactly fit the theme of a life domain cleric. I guess you could spin it as stronger armor protects your life, but that's true for any class, not just a cleric devoted to a god of life and healing. Honestly, I would have rather seen a feature here that leaned further into this subclass's flavor, but then we read on and we find Disciple of Life, 1st level. That's right, a 3rd 1st level feature for the subclass. Whenever you cast a healing spell of 1st level or higher, the target heals additional hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. This is a superb benefit which scales up somewhat as you gain higher level spells, and it makes your healing the best there is. This also means that the cleric is one of the most feature-loaded classes at 1st level in 5th edition. We're going to see exceptions in a couple of domain cases, but overall 1st level cleric has a lot to offer. Channel Divinity, Preserve Life. As the second Channel Divinity option you receive, you can present your holy symbol as an action and heal hit points equal to 5 times your cleric level. This healing can be divided as you choose among creatures within 30 feet of you, but the catch is that it cannot restore a creature to above half its maximum hit points. This limitation is a balancing factor to prevent the feature from being too strong, as you can use it every short rest. Blessed Healer, 6th level. When you heal another creature with a 1st level or higher spell, you yourself gain hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. This feature continues with the theme of the subclass and further makes your healing more efficient and widespread. Divine Strike, 8th level. Once on each of your turns, you can deal an extra 1d8 radiant damage on a weapon attack. This increases to 2d8 radiant at 14th level. Exactly how much you'll be making weapon attacks and how effective they can be is going to vary quite a bit for a Life Domain Cleric. For some, this feature is a great boost in combat effectiveness. For others, this will go unused a lot of the time. Theoretically, it kind of fits a Life Cleric, and it coincides with the proficiency in heavy armor. Is this subclass indicating to us that Life Clerics are full-plated Templars with healing magic? This is not exactly the image that comes to my mind when I think of a miracle-working divine healer, but rather something like this. Nonetheless, this is effective mechanics-wise, and so long as you play into it, you'll reap the benefits. Supreme Healing, 17th level. Instead of rolling dice when you heal a creature, you instead heal the maximum amount. For example, if you cast a 3rd level Cure Wounds on a creature, instead of rolling 3d8 plus your Wisdom modifier, you automatically heal 24 points plus Wisdom. Also, don't forget the extra 5 from Disciple of Life. If there were any doubts that the Life Cleric was the best healer in 5e, those are completely blown out of the water with this mega charge to your healing spells. The Life Domain Cleric is a powerhouse of healing, allowing you and your allies to go farther and withstand more punishment than you might think even possible. It is one of the more math-heavy classes I've seen in 5e as well, so that aspect might put some people off. Also, it does not add anything unique or new to the standard concept of a cleric. That might matter to you or it might not. Whether this subclass is your cup of tea or not, you cannot deny that a Life Cleric makes a huge impact on a party's life force. The Light Domain. Light is a close second when it comes to classic themes of the Cleric. While you are still a fantastic healer, you focus more on delivering holy radiance and divine flames that sear away the forces of darkness. Domain Spells, 1st level. Your domain spells give you evoker or blaster type options, with fiery greats like Flaming Sphere, Scorching Ray, Fireball, and Wall of Fire. You have a potent arsenal of direct damage. This is a major increase to your offensive power. Though if you are up against enemies that resist fire or are immune to fire, your blasts of flame are going to be far, far less effective. It is also a little odd to me that there is so much fire in the Light Domain. Of course, fire produces light, but this sometimes feels like a fire domain instead of domain of celestial radiance. Bonus Cantrip, 1st level. Also, at the start of your path, you gain the Light Cantrip, which is a nice minor benefit. It's nothing spectacular, but it is a very efficient means of illumination, and it fits the subclass theme. Warding Flare, 1st level. When you are attacked by a creature within 30 feet, you can use your reaction to send a glare of light into its eyes, imposing disadvantage on the attack. You can do this a number of times per long rest equal to your Wisdom modifier. This is a decent option for the Cleric's reaction, but it's situational and fairly limited. Channel Divinity, Radiance of the Dawn. Your second option for Channel Divinity comes in the form of a 30-foot burst of light that dispels magical darkness and deals a respectable amount of radiant damage to enemies. Improved Flare, 6th level. You can now use your Warding Flare to impose disadvantage on creatures that attack your allies, not just you. This opens up the feature quite a bit. It makes it somewhat less situational, though you do have to be within 30 feet of the attacker. Potent spellcasting, 8th level. You add your wisdom modifier to the damage rolls of cleric cantrips, just like what we saw with the knowledge domain, which is even more fitting with the light domain and its blaster type theme. However, there is something pretty wonky that is taking place here. When the player's handbook came out, the only damage dealing cantrip of the cleric was Sacred Flame, which deals radiant damage, and it fits this subclass incredibly well. But by this point in 5e, the most potent cleric cantrip is actually Toll the Dead, which involves a wisdom saving throw and deals necrotic damage. It's a necromancy spell. It's quite contrary to the theme of radiance and holy fire. If you're surrounded by enemies, the Word of Radiance cantrip technically deals the most damage overall, but that's probably a rare situation for a light cleric to be in. This feels like an oversight on the designer's behalf, and I wonder if the light domain should have given you Firebolt along with light at 2nd level. Corona of Light, 17th level. As an action, you emit bright light in a 60-foot radius and dim light for 30 more feet. Enemies in the bright light have disadvantage on saves against spells that deal fire or radiant damage. The light lasts for a minute, but you can reactivate it at will by spending another action. This is the perfect complement to many of your spells and potentially many allies' spells as well. The light domain is a worthy offering and a subclass that greatly increases the cleric's offensive spell power. I'm not sure if the strong blasting focus is exactly how I would have done a light domain, but it works well enough for what it is. One point to bear in mind is that Scorching Ray and Fireball, two of your most powerful staple blasting spells, have long ranges, but your subclass features like Warding Flare, Radiance of the Dawn, and Corona of Light have short to medium ranges. For some, this will be a drawback or a complication, while for others, it will be an enjoyable dynamic, the ability to be a blaster that functions much closer to enemies than a typical mage. The Nature Domain. The Nature Domain brings the cleric close to the druid, who is the cleric's cousin in many ways. The name of the domain is slightly awkward to me, for one, because the word nature is just so broad, and two, because other domains, like Tempest and Light even, are also nature-based forces. Domain spells, 1st level. Your domain spells are basically all from the druid spell list, and they deal with interacting with animals or controlling animals, and invoking magic related to plants and weather. This list stops short of giving the most potent druid spells, like conjure animals for example, but that's probably to avoid stepping on the druid's toes too much. There are some nice things that you can do with these spells, but nothing really to jump for joy over. Acolyte of Nature, 1st level. You learn 1 druid cantrip and you gain proficiency in 1 druid skill. This is a decent benefit and certainly something that you can utilize. It's not amazing, but it's a cool minor feature that fits the theme of the subclass really well. Also, it would be quite silly to be a cleric of the nature domain and not be proficient in the nature skill. Bonus proficiency, 1st level. Just as with the life domain, you gain heavy armor proficiency. Keep in mind that most heavy armors do have a minimum strength requirement, which if you do not meet, your speed is reduced by 10 feet. Again, my criticism is that it just feels sort of out of place. I would have rather seen heavy armor proficiency just with domains like War and Forge, but for whatever reason it gets jammed into some other domains as well. What the hell does wearing chainmail or full plate have to do with being devoted to a forest god? Despite that I would have done things a bit different here, objectively speaking, I cannot deny the potential usefulness of heavy armor. Channel Divinity, Charm Animals and Plants, 2nd level. Your alternate use of Channel Divinity comes in the form of a mass charm effect that functions against beast and plant creatures. This is better at lower levels, but beasts and plants become much rarer the higher level you get. The vast majority of beasts and plant creatures span CR 0 through 5, so this feature fits the subclass's theme quite a bit, but the effect leaves something to be desired. Dampen Elements, 6th level. Whenever you or a creature within 30 feet takes acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, you can give the target resistance against that instance of damage as a reaction. I'm not sure why poison isn't on this list. Plenty of animals and plants in nature have poisons. But overall, this is a very useful defense feature, particularly great because you can use it at will. Divine Strike, 8th level. Once per turn, when you hit with a weapon, you deal an extra 1d8 cold, fire, or lightning damage, increasing to 2d8 at 14th level. The versatility of damage types and the elemental motif are both nice touches. Master of Nature, 17th level. While you have a beast or plant charmed by your channel divinity, you can use a bonus action to command what the creature will do on its next turn. That's it. I find this feature pretty disappointing. Beasts and plants, sorry to say, are so minor compared to what you are doing in the final tier of D&D. At this point, you're adventuring through the most dangerous reaches of other planes, battling archdevils, demon lords, titans, elder aberrations, ancient dragons. There's not many wolves and blights showing up here, and if they do, they're like gnats to you. Otherwise, another way we could angle this critique is that Wizards of the Coast needs to introduce some more high challenge rating plant monsters in the game. I don't think it's very realistic to have that high of CR beasts just due to the limitations of what an animal is. Anyhow, the feature's name is also another thing that's kind of strange. It's a bit misleading. You're not really the master of nature. It's more like charmer of bears and shambling mounds. Unfortunately, this feature is something that you should have gotten many levels earlier. Nature is the first domain so far to disappoint me somewhat. The level 2 and level 17 features really should have just been combined into one, then a new, more powerful capstone feature installed. It's not a bad subclass, it could just use a little strengthening and revision. Tempest domain. Continuing with the nature theme, we move on to the Tempest domain, which promises stormy power. Let's see if the subclass can rise above the issues of the nature domain and at the same time manage to be different than both the semi-druid nature domain and the blaster-like light domain. Domain spells, 1st level. Lo and behold, we find more druid spells. But instead of animal and plant themes, we get fog, wind, thunder, lightning, water, and insect plague? There are some good options here, and it expands nicely upon the cleric's baseline repertoire of magic. Bonus proficiencies, 1st level. Not bonus proficiency, but bonus proficiencies. This time, the cleric receives both heavy armor and martial weapons. As before, I don't know why exactly Tempest is associated with plate armor and greatswords, but you cannot deny how useful this is. Wrath of the Storm, 1st level. When an adjacent creature hits you with an attack, you can spend your reaction to deal 2d8 lightning or thunder damage to it, or half damage on a successful dex save. You can use this feature a number of times per long rest equal to your wisdom modifier. At lower levels, this is great, but unfortunately the damage does not scale up in any way. So at this point, I'm checking back with the knowledge domain. I'm wondering if I overlooked a 1st level feature. Nope. All these other domains have 3 features at 1st level, but the knowledge domain only got 2 features. Well, that sucks. It's been my favorite domain thus far in the ranking, and it got shortchanged. Moving along, we have Channel Divinity, Destructive Wrath, 2nd level. The Tempest Cleric's Channel Divinity mode allows you to deal maximum damage with a lightning or thunder damage roll. It's simple, it's straightforward, and potentially a major damage boost, though you don't exactly have a lot of high damage lightning and thunder spells. Call Lightning, if outside during a storm, does do a good amount of damage over time, but what you really would need with this Destructive Wrath is something like Lightning Bolt, so it could really capitalize on doing a big burst of damage at once. If you can find a way to access a stronger storm spell, then Destructive Wrath probably bumps up to a bit higher rating, but as it is, it's not quite as good as it might lead you to believe. Thunderbolt Strike, 6th level. When you deal lightning damage to a large or smaller creature, you can also push it up to 10 feet away from you. Why not include thunder too? It's literally called Thunderbolt Strike. plus thunder is generally what gets associated with blasting back the targets that you hit. I don't know, something is missing from this feature. Divine Strike, 8th level. As we've seen at all 8th levels for the domains thus far, you get a damage boost. This time it's an extra 1d8 thunder damage per turn on a weapon hit, upping to 2d8 at 14th level. The good thing this time around is that the Tempest domain gets martial weapon proficiency. Along with heavy armor proficiency, this subclass highly incentivizes Tempest clerics to prioritize strength along with wisdom. You will want Constitution as well, since you'll probably be in melee most or part of the time. It's not too tall of an order to be needing all those ability scores to be good, but you might want to keep all this in mind as you are developing your character. Stormborn, 17th level. When you're not underground or indoors, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed. So in other words, when you're not in a dungeon, in Dungeons and Dragons, you can fly. It's underwhelming to me, and why the restriction? It's just unnecessary. And why call it Stormborn? That sounds like something from character creation, when you're deciding what your backstory is and into what circumstances you were born. At the point of 17th level, I would rather this feature have been something like a flying speed without the restrictions, and once per short rest you can cast Lightning Bolt. That would help out with that earlier issue that I pointed out on the maximized storm damage. The Tempest Cleric does a little better overall compared to his cousin, the Nature Cleric. While there are a couple Tempest features that are pretty cool, I think other ones do need some improvement. It's a viable subclass though, and especially if you play into the Battle Cleric side of it, with the heavy armor and the strong martial weapon focus, you'll do well. Trickery domain. Over and over I've heard about how much the Trickery domain has issues and how bad it is, so I'm curious to see what my take on it will be. I remember running a Drow Trickery Cleric NPC a few years ago who had a rogue ally, and they made for an excellent and really effective pair. I quite like the idea of a cleric of a trickery god. It breaks out of the often generic mold of what a cleric is. And mythologies, religions, and folk tales often have fascinating stories involving tricksters. Domain spells, 1st level. The domain spells of Trickery are just superb. I don't even know where to begin commenting on these. Mirror Image is one of the best defensive spells. Pass Without Trace is one of the best stealth and scouting spells. Dispel Magic is a staple anti-magic spell. Dimension Door is incredible for both infiltrating and escaping. Polymorph is a world of possibilities unto itself. Dominate Person is high-level mind control. Even Charm Person and Disguise Self can be utilized to great benefit, starting from the lowest of levels. This domain spell list is the best one I've seen yet for the Cleric. Blessing of the Trickster, 1st level. As an action, you can give a creature other than yourself advantage on stealth checks for 1 hour. You can use this feature at will, though you can only have one creature blessed at a time. It would have been nice if you could use this on yourself, but giving a party member stealth advantage still is pretty nice. It's quite common for a rogue or other stealthy character to scout a little ways ahead of the party, so this enhances their ability to spy on upcoming monsters and set up a surprise ambush attack. And at this point, I notice that the Trickery Cleric, like the Knowledge Cleric, gets shafted out of a 3rd feature at level 1. Why do this with some classes but not others? Is it because the domain spells are so great? I don't know. Whatever the case, it's kind of frustrating. At least give the Trickery Cleric Minor Illusion cantrip or something. Channel Divinity, Invoke Duplicity, 2nd level. As an action, you can create a perfect illusory duplicate of yourself that lasts for 1 minute. It can exist up to 120 feet away from you, and you can even cast spells through it. If both you and the duplicate are next to a creature, you gain advantage on your attack rolls against that creature. The downside is that you must use concentration to maintain the illusion, but given that the effect is so potent, I can't say that I'm surprised with that. The illusion does not shatter if it gets hit or damaged, and you can use this once per short rest, or even more at higher levels. There are just so many creative possibilities with having a duplicate of yourself. Channel Divinity, Cloak of Shadows, 6th level. At this level, you get a third option shared by your Channel Divinity. As an action, you become invisible until the end of your next turn, though unfortunately you become visible if you attack or cast a spell during this round. Situationally, this could serve as kind of a better disengage, but that's not exactly anything to celebrate. The fact that this costs your Channel Divinity and an action, and it only lasts for 1 round or until you attack or cast, just doesn't do it for me. There are many ways this could have been better. It could have lasted longer and not shared the Channel Divinity. Or perhaps it could have been a bonus action and not break when you attack or cast. Divine Strike, 8th level. Once per turn, when you hit with a weapon attack, you can deal an extra 1d8 poison damage, increasing to 2d8 at 14th level. Unfortunately, as we all know, there are lots of creatures that are immune to poison. Undead, lots of fiends, constructs, so this is the least good of these 8th level damage boosts as of yet. Why was this not psychic damage? Or put in a line that this divine venom bypasses poison resistance and immunity. That would be a trickstery thing. Imagine that, poisoning things that had always been immune to poison. Again, the Trickery Cleric is getting shortchanged. Improve Duplicity, 17th level. Your Invoke Duplicity now becomes Invoke Quadruplicity as you produce 4 illusory clones when you use that Channel Divinity. The possibilities with this are quite amusing, both in terms of confounding your enemies in combat and befuddling NPCs during RP scenes. An Achilles heel with these illusion clones, however, is that creatures with True Sight, Blind Sight, and Tremor Sense are not going to be fooled by this, and many powerful creatures at high levels have such special senses. You can still benefit from casting spells through the clones, so at least that perk stays viable. I can see why a lot of people speak poorly of the Trickery domain, as it could be improved a bit, I'll admit, particularly with the mid and high level features. The low level features, which were the ones I had used with that Drow NPC, are quite nice. The domain spells alone are just amazing, making you nearly a wizard cleric in one single feature. Despite the shortcomings, I personally do like this domain. It has so many possibilities, and it just expands tremendously on what a cleric can do. So, I caution you from hating on it too much. The War domain. The last domain in the player's handbook is War, which fully embraces the Battle Priest concept. Is it going to feel like a fighter cleric or a paladin cleric? Well, let's see. Domain spells, 1st level. The domain spells don't really expand too much outside of a cleric's standard repertoire, but there are a few good spells in here. Spiritual Weapon, for example. Crusader's Mantle, Spirit Guardians, Hold Monster. Already we get a bit of a paladin cleric feeling from the subclass. Bonus proficiencies, 1st level. Here's where the War Cleric and the Tempest Cleric fist bump. They grin at each other while donning their heavy armor and grabbing mauls. Do you have a good strength score? Yes, of course you do. War Priest, 1st level. Starting at just level 1, when you make a weapon attack, you can make another weapon attack as a bonus action. You can do this a number of times per long rest, equal to your Wisdom modifier. The power of this swings wildly depending upon what level you are. At low levels, this is incredible. It's even better than the fighter's action surge in some ways, as you can make more than one extra attack per short rest. But as soon as you hit level 5, its power level drops like a stone in water, because suddenly all the true warrior classes have extra attack, while you are spending a bonus action to extra attack only a few times per day. But the stone jumps back up out of the water and becomes great again if you are multi-class and high enough level to have both extra attack from a warrior class and war priest from the cleric, which isn't really that difficult. You only need 1 level of cleric. So let's imagine that you're fighter 5, cleric 1. You can make 2 attacks with your action, then a 3rd attack with your bonus action. It's really good, though of course limited by your wisdom, which is competing with your strength and your constitution too. We could spend a long time theorizing on this feature. It's complicated for me to rate it because it could be low or high depending upon your level and your class composition, so average it out to B tier, I guess. Channel Divinity, Guided Strike, 2nd level. When you make an attack roll, you can use Guided Strike to give a plus 10 bonus to your attack roll. Plus 10. Now that feels like a god is truly intervening in your favor. Channel Divinity, War God's Blessing. This is actually an enhancement to your Guided Strike. Instead of putting a plus 10 bonus on your own attack roll, you can use your reaction to put it on a different creature's attack roll. It's a nice augmentation for an already solid feature. Divine Strike, 8th level. When you hit with a weapon attack, it deals an extra 1d8 of the weapon's damage type, or an extra 2d8 starting at 14th level. Another Divine Strike feature that functions very well and really increases your damage capabilities. Avatar of Battle, 17th level. You gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, but only from non-magical attacks, which at this very high level, lots of things will have magical attacks, especially the major important monsters or NPCs that you fight. Now, of course, this will help you against some creatures, pretty much against lesser creatures, but by 17th level, you can easily deal with such pests anyhow. The name Avatar of Battle leads us to believe this feature would be much more than the mediocre benefit that it provides. So, toss this one into the ever-growing bin of lackluster 5e capstones. The War Domain is definitely effective, though more plain and straightforward. I don't feel particularly inspired while I read it, but again, it is a good choice that will accomplish what it intends to do, namely smacking things with a big weapon. That wraps up all the core PHB domains. Now we go to the Dungeon Master's Guide for the Death Domain, which may or may not be accessible for player characters, depending upon the DM's preferences in their own game. The Death Domain. The Death Domain should really just be named the Evil Domain, as it's essentially a grab bag of all things nasty and wicked. Let's take a look at this skull helmet wearing evil cult leader and see what foul surprises he has in store. Domain spells, 1st level. Death Domain spells are a decent lot. Many of the spells are already on the Cleric's list, and the ones that aren't don't exactly get me pumped. Ray of Enfeeblement, Blight, Cloud Kill, they're situationally good. It's not bad, I suppose. Bonus Proficiency, 1st level. You gain proficiency with martial weapons. I could see many Death Clerics wanting better armor over better weapons, but I suppose this fits a dark, aggressive theme. Reaper, 1st level. You learn a Necromancy cantrip from any spell list, which of course will be either Chill Touch or Toll the Dead. And whenever you cast a Necromancy cantrip that has only a single target, you can instead target 2 creatures if they are within 5 feet of each other. It's a nice feature, situational, but not terribly so. Channel Divinity, Touch of Death, 2nd level. When you hit a creature with a melee attack, you can deal additional necrotic damage to it equal to 5 plus twice your cleric level. This is quite a strong amount of damage, especially at low levels. It's not more powerful than, say, a paladin's smite. Actually, smites can deal a fair amount more damage, but still, Touch of Death is nothing to sneeze at. Also, note that the feature says melee attack, not melee weapon attack, so this can combine with melee attack spells like Inflict Wounds or Vampiric Touch, on your spell list there. Inescapable Destruction, 6th level. The necrotic damage you deal bypasses resistance, but not immunity. This is nice. It helps overcome a classic and strangely ironic paradox that necromancer-type characters are not very good at damaging the very undead that they command. Their own necromancy that they're so focused into doesn't do so good at hurting zombies, skeletons, vampires, ghosts, etc., because undead typically resist or are even immune to necrotic damage. Immunity still does function against your necrotic damage though, so don't go leaping for too much joy. Divine Strike, 8th level. It's no surprise that you now deal an extra 1d8 necrotic damage with weapon attacks, and, you guessed it, upping to 2d8 at 14th level. I feel good for rating this at B tier due to the aforementioned inescapable destruction, so huzzah for the subclasses features synergizing with one another. Improved Reaper, 17th level. Your Reaper feature now applies to any necromancy spell up to 5th level, which again is kind of situational, but when you can utilize it, it's awesome to fork a spell to 2 targets instead of 1. The Death Domain works well, and its features complement each other, so I respect it from a design standpoint. My only nitpick is with the name, as it seems really more like the Evil Domain, than maybe the Undeath Domain or the Negative Energy Domain. As a DM, I would allow a player to take this domain. It's certainly strong, but it's no stronger than many other options that are out there in the game, and overall it's more or less on par with the other cleric domains. Of course, a Death Cleric is not going to fit in every party, nor in every campaign, so I would encourage you all to put some thought into the right time to make such a grim character. The same as you would with making a character that's like a Necromancer Wizard, a Shadow Sorcerer, or a Fiend Warlock. The Forge Domain. Next we turn to Zenithar's Guide to Everything. A Forge Cleric follows a god of crafting, and is part metal worker, part battle priest. Artisanship and smithing are major parts of society, so it's fitting to have gods and clerics dedicated to such a domain. Domain spells, 1st level. This is a clever spell list that really evokes the flavor of the subclass. Hats off to it, really. Aside from the flavor, it also provides a mixture of quite useful effects. There's combat enhancements, fiery damage dealing, there's utility, protection, creation spells. Very well done here. Bonus proficiencies, 1st level. You gain proficiency with heavy armor and smith's tools. I do find it odd that this doesn't also give you martial weapon proficiency. After all, you are an expert crafter who forges such weapons, yet you cannot actually use them proficiently. Even the illustration of the subclass shows a dwarf woman wielding a maul that looks like it weighs 100 pounds. Blessing of the Forge, 1st level. Once per long rest, you can imbue magic into a non-magical suit of armor or a weapon, giving it a +1 magic enhancement. At low levels, this is great. At high levels, it becomes a far less helpful or maybe even nigh useless option. Channel Divinity, Artisan's Blessing, 2nd level. As a rather unique option for Channel Divinity, you can perform a 1-hour ritual to create any metal or partially metal object up to a value of 100 gold pieces. It reads as though this is referring to the market value of 100 gold pieces, so we'll go with that. You must provide the base components equal to the item's full value, and these base components, even if they're just some gold coins, transmute into the object itself. I very much appreciate the creative potential of this feature. Though if I scrutinize it, things start to get a little wacky. For one, you could just craft said item anyhow, though at the expense of more time. Perhaps you would need to have access to a workshop or a smithy to do so. You would, however, expend less base materials, of course. So, in effect, Artisan's Blessing is more like a portable shop that can sell you any non-magical item as long as it's at least partially metal and no more than 100 gold pieces of market value. But there's another point worth exploring for just a moment. The feature does not specify size nor volume limits, so it seems that you can permanently create additional matter as long as the market value is equal. Like you could create an entire fortress or castle bit by bit, every other hour erecting 100 GP worth of partially metal walls, floors, ramparts, and the like. The implications on the endgame world are tremendous here. Why would a king not pour heaps and heaps of funding into temples dedicated to Forge Domain clerics and Forge Domain gods? The clerics in these temples would cut down on the cost and the time of construction to just mere fractions. No labor force would be needed, just the individual clerics, and there's no need to transport massive blocks of construction materials or extract the raw materials from the earth or what have you. The Forge clerics could also create structures and objects that are otherwise impossible to produce given the limits of the medieval technology level of the setting. This train of thought could go on and on and on. It's something of a rabbit hole. It speaks to how deeply creative a feature like this is, and at the same time, how incredibly wonky ultra-high magic settings are if you stop and really think about them. Soul of the Forge, 6th level. You gain resistance to fire damage, and while you're wearing heavy armor, you gain a +1 bonus to AC. As far as passive benefits go, you can't really ask for much better than this. Divine Strike, 8th level. Fittingly, your weapon attacks now deal an extra 1d8 fire on a hit, or 2d8 at 14th level. This goes along well with the fiery forge domain here, though as we're all well aware, fire is one of the more commonly resisted damage types. Saint of Forge and Fire, 17th level. You now have immunity to fire damage, and while wearing heavy armor, you resist non-magical weapon damage. As mentioned before, many monsters have magic attacks by this very high level, so it's not such a benefit, though straight-up fire immunity is worthwhile. I'd say this is a decent capstone. There are many that are worse, and of course some that are much better. I'm impressed by the Forge domain. It has power, it has utility, it has a lot of creativity, and more. I must give a bardic bow of recognition to the designer or designers of this fantastic subclass. Sure, it has downsides or situational benefits, but that's how everything is. No one option should be all perfect. The Grave Domain. A few pages later, we come across the Grave Domain. Not the Death Domain, but Grave, which is actually quite different. A Grave Cleric treats death, entombing, cemeteries, and afterlife as serious matters to be vigilantly protected. Undeath is an abomination in such a religion, particularly undeath that binds and twists souls, preventing them from passing on to the beyond. Domain Spells, 1st level. There are some good options on this spell list, especially once you reach 5th level Cleric, but there are some questionable ones too. It is also something of a confused spell list. Raise Dead? Isn't it against a Grave Cleric's beliefs to bring people back to life once they've died and passed on? Hold Monster or Wall of Stone would seem more fitting to me. And the Grave Domain spells include Vampiric Touch, but vampires are one of the ultimate evils in the eyes of the Grave Domain religion. Spirit Guardians or Glyph of Warding would have made more sense here. Circle of Mortality, 1st level. When you cast a healing spell on a creature at 0 hit points, you heal it as though you had rolled max on the dice. Also, you gain Spare the Dying as a bonus cantrip, which you can cast as a bonus action and at a range of 30 feet. Both are interesting benefits, somewhat situational of course, but in those situations they are wonderfully effective. Eyes of the Grave, 1st level. As an action, you can sense the location of undead within 60 feet of you. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier per long rest. I appreciate the thematic aspect of this, but 60 feet is a fairly limited range. I wish the feature just did something more, either a benefit that was less situational, or if it does have to stay very situational, be a stronger benefit that has more substance to it. Channel Divinity, Path to the Grave, 2nd level. You place a death curse on a creature within 30 feet of you. The next time you or an ally hits it with an attack before the end of your next turn, it has vulnerability to the attack's damage. This really doesn't do you yourself any good if you use it on your own, because it takes your action to use it, so you could have just attacked twice instead of Path of the Grave this turn, and then attack next turn, and you hope and you hit to deal double the damage. Also, the Grave Domain is not a weapon supporting subclass, so your weapon attacks might not be great. You could use a spell attack instead, like Inflict Wounds, and that would deal a ton of damage for 2nd level on a hit. But if you miss, you just spent 2 turns actions, your Channel Divinity, and a spell slot, all for nothing. Probably the best case scenario is for Path of the Grave to set up an ally rogue sneak attack or an ally paladin's smite. In that case, it's going to deal an obscene amount of damage. This feature works really well if you coordinate things just right. A quick tangent here. I often find these grave and death-themed characters a little wonky. A fighter wielding a sword also delivers death. So does a sorcerer slinging lightning, a druid sending hordes of giant owls to slash down foes. Even a holy cleric calling down beams of celestial radiance brings death to just as many creatures as the so-called death class. It's like the whole death theme gets reduced to a superficial gothic costume, but doesn't actually bring about much more death than anyone else using other offensive options. This wasn't quite as much of an issue in older editions, I've noticed, because they were much more gritty and brutal, but starting with the great mentality shift of 4E that carries through 5E, it's rare to see things like actual death effects or ability drain. The contemporary approach that we have is definitely kinder, it's less grim, but it has lost some of its guts, and the death magic characters suffer because of this. Sentinel at Death's Door, 6th level. I really like the name of this feature. It has prose, it even has a bit of story if you look at it that way. A number of times per long rest equal to your wisdom modifier, you can use your reaction to turn a critical hit into a normal hit, as long as you're within 30 feet of the attacker. It's a nice protective ability and a good use of the cleric's reaction. Potent spellcasting, 8th level. We've already seen this one before. You add your wisdom modifier to the damage you deal with cantrips. You'll probably use Toll the Dead a lot as a grave cleric. This improves an already great damage cantrip. Keeper of Souls, 17th level. Once per turn, when an enemy dies within 60 feet of you, you, or an ally within 60 feet of you, regains hit points equal to the enemy's total number of hit dice. The name of this feature is misleading as you're not keeping any souls, nor would a grave cleric want to keep hold of souls that should be passing on. The flavor of the feature says you steal a tiny sliver of vitality from the departing soul, but at 17th level, should your features really be about pinching off itsy-bitsy grains? Now, mechanically speaking, this feature is actually pretty damn good. You can do this every round as long as an enemy is dying every round. It doesn't require any kind of action on your part. The amount of healing isn't bad at all. So really, it's only the flavor of it or the name of it that bugs me. In fact, mechanics-wise, I would say this is one of the better capstones I've seen yet in 5e. There are a couple of moments in the Grave domain where I think things could be improved a little bit, but overall it's another solid option for a cleric. I personally would consider playing one whose background was a grave digger. The Arcana domain. In the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, we find the Arcana domain Cleric. I've actually played this subclass before and I quite liked it, but it was a short campaign, so I did not get to see the full extent of the domain. I'm eager to review this one. As I've mentioned in previous class rankings, the Skag is one of the swingiest, wonkiest books in 5e, where you can find some utterly pitiful options as well as some of the strongest options in the game. Domain spells, 1st level. Sort of like what we saw in the Trickery domain, the Arcana domain spells make you a quasi-wizard cleric. The Arcana domain spell list is not as riveting as Trickery's, but there are some great utility, illusion, and divination options, as well as Magic Missile and Teleportation Circle. Arcane Initiate, 1st level. You gain proficiency in the Arcana skill along with learning 2 wizard cantrips. This is the sort of feature that you can really sink your teeth into. There are lots of great cantrip options to pick from, and they really add style and versatility to your cleric. The Arcana skill is a great one to have proficiency in as well. Unfortunately, Arcana, like Trickery and Knowledge, doesn't get a 3rd feature at level 1 like all the other domains do. And strangely, these 3 are my favorite domains. I'm noticing a pattern here. Channel Divinity, Arcane Abjuration, 2nd level. You can now turn other creatures than just undead. Celestials, Elementals, Fae, and Fiends. When you reach 5th level, you can permanently banish such creatures, much like how you can destroy lesser undead with your Turn Undead. However, you can only target one creature with Arcane Abjuration, unlike the Radius effect like Turn Undead. so this con might be a little on the steep side. If there's only one such creature or one major creature that is particularly threatening in a fight, this still can turn the tables of an encounter in your party's favor. If it's a big horde though, its effectiveness is going to drop considerably. Overall, this is a wonderfully flavored feature that fits the subclass very well. Spellbreaker, 6th level. When you cast a healing spell on a creature, you can also end one harmful spell that is affecting the target, as long as said spell is not of a higher spell level than your healing spell. This is a rather nice dispel magic type effect that rides for free on any healing spell of yours, and there will be times in which this comes in immensely helpful throughout all levels of play. Potent Spellcasting, 8th level. As expected, the Arcana domain gets the damage increase to cantrips, which is quite fitting. And don't forget, this applies to wizard cantrips you got from Arcane Initiate, as they also count as cleric cantrips for you. Arcane Mastery, 17th level. You choose a 6th, a 7th, an 8th, and a 9th level wizard spell, and you add them to your list of domain spells, such that you always have them prepared. At this point, your state of being a wizard cleric increases a great deal. What a fantastic feature here. It actually reminds me of another fantastic and kind of similar feature, Bardic Secrets from the Bard class, which is also one that I really like. The potential with this is just so good, and I'm pleased to see not only another great cleric capstone feature, but another entry from the Skag that's actually very worthwhile. I really like this domain, and it's great through and through. It has a ton of versatility, and it's almost like playing a multi-class character without actually multi-classing. My one complaint is that it only has 2 features at first level, unlike the 3 that most domains get. The Order domain. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything has 3 cleric subclasses, the first of which is the Order domain. Just like how the Death domain could have been called the Evil domain, the Order domain could have been called the Law domain. As 4E and 5E has this insistence on downplaying alignment, we are starting to see this once predominantly featured aspect of the game fading into the background. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the shift away from using alignment in D&D or focusing on or implementing alignment through mechanics. It's not the fact of the game changing or evolving that concerns me, so much as the danger of elements of the game being stripped away without them being replaced by an equally interesting or even better element. That said, let's give the Order domain a fair shot as we go through here. Domain spells, 1st level. Well, this is a potent list of spells. Many are from the Cleric's list already, but not all of them. Slow, Compulsion, Dominate Person, which are 3 very powerful enchantment spells for control effects. Heroism at 1st level is also a good bolstering spell. The Order domain is off to a strong start here. Bonus proficiencies, 1st level. You gain proficiency in heavy armor, as well as either Intimidation or Persuasion. It's a nice touch, it fits the style of Order. Voice of Authority, 1st level. When you cast a 1st level or higher spell that targets an ally, they can use their reaction to make a weapon attack against a creature of your choice. What a fantastic feature. This is not only potentially very strong, let's say your rogue sneak attacks for a 2nd time in a round, but it expresses the theme of the subclass so well. Bravo, this is surprisingly powerful. Channel Divinity, Order's Demand, 2nd level. As an action, you can target any number of creatures within 30 feet of you. Each target must succeed on a Wisdom save or be charmed by you and drop whatever they're holding. This is another thematic and highly effective feature of the Order Cleric. A creature stays charmed until the end of your next turn, or until it takes any damage. And of course, there are many creatures that are immune to charm, but when this works, and it works right, it can really alter the course of an encounter. Say you're fighting an enemy warrior. You charm him, he drops his weapon, you pick it up, and you walk away. On his next turn, he can't go after you, you're the charmer, so he draws a weaker secondary weapon like a javelin or maybe a dagger, and is forced to make do with suboptimal choices. Embodiment of Law, 6th level. When you cast an enchantment spell of 1st level or higher that has a casting time of 1 action, You can instead cast it as a bonus action. You can do this a number of times per long rest equal to your wisdom modifier. This is essentially Quicken Spell within certain parameters, and we all know how amazing Quicken Spell is. And you also have plenty of good candidates, from Hold Person and Slow to Bane and Command. It also works for Bless, interestingly enough, and that synergizes well with your Voice of Authority. It's a really great combo. Remember that you cannot cast a bonus action spell and a one action spell on the same turn, unless that one action spell is just a cantrip. So there's a balancing factor that's built into the feature just by merit of the game itself, and that keeps it from being powerful in an over-extreme sense. Divine Strike, 8th level. Let the Trickery Clerics wail with envy as the Order Domain Cleric gets psychic damage as its enhancements to weapon damage. I'm not getting over that. I hereby declare that all Trickery Clerics in my games can deal psychic damage with their Divine Strike. Or heck, the Divine Poison that just bypasses poison resistance. I think that's fine as well. Order's Wrath, 17th level. Once per round, when you deal damage to a creature with your Divine Strike, you can put a minor curse on it, and the next time an ally hits the creature, before the start of your next turn, the ally deals an extra 2d8 psychic damage on the attack. It's a decently powerful cleric capstone, though I don't know exactly how often you're going to be making weapon attacks, so unfortunately it doesn't synergize as well as I would have liked, but it's not terrible. The Order Domain is a high-powered subclass. It's not game-breaking, but it's enough of a high power that I hope 5e doesn't get into power creep. There is a slight power creep with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, but I'm not going to go overboard on that topic. I just don't want to be in a situation in which previous options keep getting overshadowed by newer ones. In my campaigns, I do have a few house rules, but I don't ban subclasses or options from official source books. In fact, I rarely ever say no to things from third-party books or homebrew concepts. Only if something is just way out of line do I decline, and even then, I try to work with the player to develop the option into something that functions better while preserving the spirit of it. We're all playing the game to explore a mythic world of creative expression, so why would I want to limit someone's creativity and their opportunities to play the character that they really want to play? I wouldn't want a DM doing that to me. And especially if a player bought a book, they spent their money on it, so bloody hell, I want them to be able to use the damn thing. The content is something that they've purchased, so I guess what I'm trying to say is a diverse array of options really is great. I encourage it wholeheartedly. But Wizards of the Coast, please be cautious. Don't let power creep come into the game. And while you're at it, please improve some of these subclasses that are lacking in areas. The Peace Domain. There is no shortage of battle priests and war clerics and storm clerics and death bringers. But what about one of the biggest tenets of many religions? Peace. Religions often speak abundantly of peace, and I'm sure plenty of ancient ones carried this as well. It's not just a modern concept. The suffering that we all endure throughout our lives can be immense, and the ravages of mortality can be so brutal. It's just a non-stop struggle to be a living thing. The sanctuary of peace is a balancing factor that we so greatly need. And for anyone who has ever experienced a moment of true inner peace, it can make all the hardships seem worth it. Peace is a call to our better selves, our highest natures, our nobler efforts. Domain spells, first level. There are a number of effective spells on this list, though I'm really surprised that Calm Emotions isn't on here. It's a decent list of protections, helping, and communication spells, but nothing that stands out as spectacular. Implement of Peace, first level. You gain proficiency in your choice of Insight, Performance, or Persuasion. It's a minor feature, but skill proficiency is always nice. Emboldening Bond, first level. Choose a number of creatures up to your proficiency bonus. You are a valid target, by the way. When an emboldened character is within 30 feet of another emboldened character, they can each add 1d4 to an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check once per turn. It takes an action to activate this, it lasts for 10 minutes, and you can use it a number of times per day equal to your proficiency bonus. I guess this will stack with spells like Bless, Guidance, Resistance, so it's a lot of d4 bonuses that can go around. And as we have all observed, Bless is a great effect at any level, so just adding more of that in is that much better. Though Emboldening Bond has more limitations than Bless, it doesn't require concentration, and that's the one thing that Bless sometimes struggles with when the Cleric has higher level concentration spells at his disposal. Channel Divinity, Balm of Peace, 2nd level. As an action, you move up to your speed without provoking opportunity attacks. During this movement, when you come within 5 feet of a creature, you can heal it a number of hit points equal to 2d6 plus your Wisdom modifier. This is a good amount of healing at low levels, a decent amount still at mid levels, and a lesser amount at high levels, but still can help some. The movement portion of this is also interesting. It gives you a kind of dash plus disengage combo, providing this subclass with a mobility boost we rarely see in a Cleric. Even though you can only heal a creature once with this feature, keep in mind you can use Channel Divinity every short rest and multiple times per short rest at higher levels, so as long as you have the time for it, the Peace Cleric can actually give endless amounts of healing without spending any spell slots. I'm actually surprised by this. It's not too often that we see these forever healing type features. Protective Bond, 6th level. When a character under the effects of your Emboldening Bond would take damage, another emboldened character within 30 feet can use its reaction to teleport next to that first creature and take the hit for it. It's an interesting feature. It's not something we've seen much of before, and if a party coordinates their tactics well, and the encounter circumstances allow for it, they can capitalize on this feature. But unless your party really optimizes around Protective Bond, it's going to be fairly situational. Terrain and distancing is going to make a big impact, as 30 feet is not quite a long range. Potent Spellcasting, 8th level. I half expected the Peace Domain to have a radically different feature here at 8th level instead of extra damage dealing. Something maybe that absorbed damage from enemy attacks, or maybe some kind of aura of tranquility. I'm reminded of a bumper sticker I once saw when I was a teenager that read, "Fighting for peace is like screwing for virginity." It's still a good feature, of course, it's just a missed opportunity to do something different in a class that is supposed to be taking a different approach than the typical murder hobo. Expansive Bond, 17th level. The distance of your Emboldening Bond now extends to 60 feet, and when a character takes damage on behalf of another with the Protective Bond portion, they gain resistance against that damage. I'm impressed. This is a great capstone, and it takes your main subclass feature to a whole other level, and it charges up the innovative dynamic to the way that your party functions. I enjoyed my examination of the Peace Domain. It has filled a much-needed role in the array of divine options, and its features are original and effective. It's not perfect, but it's quite good. I would say it's on par with the other domains that we've seen pre-Tasha. The Twilight Domain. The final domain in this ranking is Twilight, which I have heard is immensely powerful. I've actually seen it some in action in my Land of Dreams and Nightmares campaign via Drake Fell, but he did not have so many levels in the subclass, as he was primarily a monk. So let's see. The sun has set, but night has not yet entirely engulfed the land in darkness. In this in-between time, the gloaming cleric sets out. Domain spells, 1st level. This is a fantastic spell list. Again, it gives us the kind of wizard-cleric amalgamation, or even a druid-wizard-cleric tri-combo. So many standouts, it's hard to choose which ones to even spotlight. Fairy Fire, Sleep, Moonbeam, Tiny Hut, Greater Invisibility, this is a killer start. Bonus proficiencies, 1st level. Heavy armor and martial weapon proficiency. I didn't expect that. In my mind, this was a stealthy subclass, but that might just be because of the aforementioned monk-cleric character. Though Twilight does make me think of shadows and dimness and dusky sneaking, so that doesn't click with heavy armor. Anyhow, otherwise this is just as good as it was with the Tempest and the War domains. Eyes of Night, first level. You have dark vision out to 300 feet, which is the farthest range of dark vision I've seen in all of 5e. As an action, you can share the dark vision with a number of creatures equal to your wisdom modifier, which lasts for an hour. You must complete a long rest to be able to share it again, unless you sacrifice a spell of any slot level to do so again at any time. Vigilant Blessing, first level. As an action, you can give yourself or a creature that you touch advantage on its next initiative check. Only one target can have this benefit at a time. This is a really solid secondary feature. It's simple, it's elegant, it's effective. Channel Divinity, Twilight Sanctuary, second level. As an action, you emit a 30-foot aura of dim light that lasts for 1 minute. Whenever you or an ally ends their turn in this area, you can grant the target temporary HP equal to 1d6 plus your cleric level, or instead end one charm or fear effect on it. The amount of temporary hit points that this can provide is amazing. The allies do have to stay pretty close to you, or at least end their turns pretty close to you, but the overall size of the area is quite large. You're creating it at a 30-foot radius. Plus, the dispelling of charm and fear effects situationally can be a lifesaver. I'm also thinking that there might be a few benefits that you could utilize from this dim light, lightly obscured effect that you're creating. Quite the Channel Divinity option here. Steps of Night, 6th level. When you're in dim light or darkness, you can spend a bonus action to gain a flying speed equal to your walking speed for 1 minute. You can use this a number of times per long rest, equal to your proficiency bonus. This is a really good flight ability to get here at the beginning of the mid-levels of the game. In fact, this is often a better option than the Tempest Cleric's capstone feature. Not that Stormborn is a good capstone by any stretch. Divine Strike, 8th level. Your weapon attacks now deal 1d8 extra radiant damage. I suppose that fits. What other damage types could it be? Acid? No. Cold? No. Plus save cold for like a winter or a frost domain. Fire? No. Force? No. Lightning? No. Necrotic? No. That's for death or undeath or vileness. Poison? No. Psychic? Well, the class description describes the Twilight Domain as restful calm and protection against the terrors of the night, so no. Thunder? No, of course not. How about an extra 1d8 of the weapon's type? No, that really only fits with the War Domain. Well, damn. Even though Radiant is not quite right, I guess it's the least awkward choice. Twilight Shroud, 17th level. You and your allies have half cover while you're within your Twilight Sanctuary aura. That means you get +2 to your AC and dexterity saving throws. That is phenomenal. The cons of this is that you have to spend your action, you have to use your Channel Divinity, which you have 3 uses of per short rest by this point, and it's lost if you become incapacitated. And the range is within 30 feet of you, which might not be so feasible in every encounter. It depends on distances and terrain and what the enemy's abilities are, etc. But none of these limitations are deal breakers. None of them are really that steep of drawbacks. So I'm proud to say that we have here another fine Cleric capstone feature. Well, what a subclass. The Twilight Domain is something to behold, and I can see why people speak so highly of it, or some people even criticize it as being too strong. So we now have Light and Twilight domains. We're just lacking a Night or a Darkness domain. The next set of clerics could be something like this: Night, Winter, and Chaos. Along with them, let's get some shoring up for the domains that came in half-baked in areas, please. So that covers all of the official cleric domains as of summer 2021. But before we get into the finalized ranking, I need to roll a persuasion check. Well, how amazing is that? I rolled a 7, the holiest of numbers. And what's my persuasion bonus? Clearly as a bard I have expertise, but what's my level? What's my charisma score? Let's see what people have to say. According to the average of what people said, I am a 12th level bard with a charisma of 18, making my persuasion bonus a plus 12, so that gives me a total persuasion check of 19. Here we go. In the days of yore, it was prophesied that there would come many a forlorn traveler, whose fatigued spirits and thirsty minds would seek out a great sanctum. In this majestic place, these world-weary travelers would find many wonders, curated by a bard. The tales of his journeys would reinvigorate the wayward souls. The knowledge contained in the lore he administers would be as a fresh bundle of firewood set atop dwindled embers. The travelers could thus slake their parched minds and spirits, find new fervor, and again venture forth on great quests and bewildering delves. Hear ye, all who have ears to listen. Do not stagger and amble forever outside the bard's sanctum. Strike your arrows into the tile of subscription and be welcome. Raise your thumbs high in approval of these grand odes. Do not dwindle away in the desert of desolation when the oasis is in sight. Add your name to the great registry of hero guests and toll the bell of awareness such that the call of the bard's sanctum will never be unheard, no matter how far you journey. And now we come to our final ranking of the Cleric subclasses. In 14th place is the Trickery domain. For 13th place, Nature. Coming in at 12th place, Tempest. At 11th place, Knowledge. For 10th place, Light. In 9th place, Grave. In 8th place, Arcana. In majestic 7th place, Peace. At 6th place, Life. At a nose bone ahead in 5th place, Death. Battling up to 4th place, War. Forging ahead to 3rd place, Forge. In 2nd place, we have Order. And 1st place goes to the Twilight domain. The Cleric class is quite fantastic in many ways. I think all the domains are good in their own ways, though, as I've stated, certain ones, namely Nature and Trickery, need some improvement. But in terms of fun mechanics and compelling themes, each domain really is worthwhile of its own merit. My personal favorites are Trickery, Knowledge, and Arcana, but I would like to try out a number of these others. The domains that I probably would not be so inclined to play are Nature, Tempest, Light, and War. Not that they're bad or anything, just I would rather play different classes other than Cleric to better achieve their effects and with mechanics that I might like better in those other classes. Though remember, as I often repeat, don't feel like you're doing something wrong by choosing a subclass that scored low in the ranking. If you enjoy it, go for it. And maybe you can even find some unique way to utilize its features and make them function even better, or combo with something else to greater effect. I want to give a big thank you and a grand blessing to all my patrons who support me on Patreon. Your support continues to be a real blessing for me, and I think about you guys often. And if anyone else is inclined, head over to my Patreon page. Not only is there free stuff there, if you want to become a Patreon, your support gets you some unique rewards, such as monthly monsters and expanded encounter maps. But again, there is free content there monthly, so everyone is welcome. That's all for now. I'm off to pray for my mortal soul at the temple. As always, thank you so much for watching, and may your adventures be many.